Listeners of this program might be familiar with some of the epicenters of high strangeness around the world. We've talked about them many times. Places like Mount Shasta, Dulce, New Mexico, Marfa, Texas, home of the Marfa Lights, Hesdale in Norway, and, of course, Skinwalker Ranch. Tonight, we explore a region in South America that combines many of the strange phenomena reported in those other hotspots. Locals and investigators alike say this stuff has been going on for decades. But what is it? What's behind it? Professor Sebastiano De Filippi became interested back when he was still in his teens. He is an internationally known musician and conductor with training in the sciences. He speaks and reads multiple languages and has developed a pretty healthy attitude of how to approach these kinds of mysteries. I was fortunate to meet him and ask if he wouldn't mind staying up until 3 a.m. Argentina time to join us to converse about what's been going on in and around Mount Uritorco in the Cordoba region of Argentina. He says he's good to go and will make his coast-to-coast debut in just a few minutes. Back in December, there was a very private, low-key, but notable gathering of intellectuals and highbrow thinkers at an enclave in California. Not sure how I got to be a fly on the wall for this thing, but it was a heck of a group of brainiacs who shared perspectives on UFOs, UAPs, and the paranormal, the intersection of mysticism and technology. One of those who made a presentation is my first guest tonight. If you Google the name Sebastiano De Filippi, what you'll see in the first few pages of search results are his accomplishments in music. He is a world-renowned composer, a conductor and musician, an Italian national who lives and works in Argentina, speaks and reads more languages than I can even list, and who since his teens has been looking into supernatural and paranormal claims, including about a particular hotspot not well known here in the U.S., but which bears remarkable similarities to places like Dulce, Sedona, Marfa, and Skinwalker Ranch. Tonight, we're going to get to lowdown. Sebastiano, welcome to Coast. Thank you for being awake at 3 a.m. Argentina time to speak with our listeners. It's great to have you here.
Hello, George. It's a pleasure for me to be on the show with you. Greetings from this sleepy, dark, and mysterious Buenos Aires.
The path you took, I just mentioned about your work experience, your history in music, a world-class musician and conductor who becomes one of your continent's most respected investigators of strange phenomena. I'm trying to think of any other conductor who's taken that same path. Are there others in your profession who've done that same, who have an interest in these subjects?
Well, there are actually two or three quite accomplished researchers in fringe fields, like, for example, Jocelyn Godwin, or there is also this British very well-known UFO author whose name escapes me now, and also the Frenchman Paul Mizraki, who was a very famous film music composer and wrote two wonderful books about UFOs and the afterlife. So there is a kind of small tradition, even if perhaps not so well known to the main public, to the wider audience.
I remember reading about crop circles, when the crop circles were really front and center, a lot of public interest in them, not as much now, but there were those who made comparisons and tried to view the crop circles through a musical prism, looking for similarities between scales and crop circles. Did you ever get into that?
Not specifically, but I can tell you music and fringe studies are not unrelated at all. We should really go back to the ancient times in ancient Greece, where Aristotle and other philosophers explained the structure of the universe in terms of sound, tone, and music. The famous harmony of the spheres. So I think it's quite a central topic, a central issue for discussion if we discuss consciousness and afterlife and UFOs and the existence of other humanities. It makes all the sense in the world for me.
Your interest started in your teens. You started reading about this guy who's kind of a guru, a mystic, who made a lot of claims about the paranormal, supernatural, claimed to be a healer, and it became a guru, very famous, became very familiar with a lot of dictators in South America. And his first name is Angel. His middle name is Christo or Christ. That seemed like a great name for a guy who's going to be a guru, but he made a lot of stuff up, right?
Yeah, sure. It's what you say is quite correct. His given names were Angel and Christ, and then his family name was a very popular, very usual Greek family name, Akoglanis. Now, I started with this in a rather more interesting way, not reading, because when I was in my teens, there was virtually nothing to read about this guy. The thing is, when I was in my teens, I used to go on holidays, on summer holidays, to spend part of my vacation time with my grandmother, maternal grandmother, who had relocated nearby this place, Mount Uritorco, in Cordoba, Argentina. And she happened to be in very friendly terms with the owner of a part of the mountain. And this guy was a friend of Akoglanis and was the one who granted him access to a kind of panoramic esplanade on the mountain in which this guy, chanting, made his contact rituals with mystery lights, let's put it that way, to begin with something.
Mystery light. So just to backtrack a little bit, I read one of your papers that you wrote about this guy, and you lay it out. Basically, you just say it flat out. He was a notorious liar, a bigamist. His medical credentials is. Go ahead. You can tell us about him.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a con man in many ways. He boasted, medicine doctoral degrees. He was not a physician. He never ended his primary school even, so he was almost an illiterate. But on the other side, he was able to heal. That was the amazing thing. He could cure a lot of major problems in the health area. So it was a very controversial, very convoluted kind of character, and he really had so many faces to him. It's a very singular case, or perhaps not. We can discuss this later on. Because after 25 years of research into this, I was able to ascertain a lot of lies, deceits, hoaxes, frauds, and that he was a con man in many senses, in many ways. But I was also able to ascertain a certain percentage of paranormal events which are genuine and impossible to explain in rational terms. Not only healings, but also the appearance of some forms of energy, of luminous energy, of balls of lights in the middle of nowhere, which are really very difficult to account for in a rational way. So it's a very convoluted case in which, once again, true and false, lies and real facts just go together hand in hand, which, by the way, I will tell you this right away, in my humble opinion, this is a landmark, a trademark of the phenomenon. It almost likes to deal with those kinds of opposites. In my view, my personal view, that's no coincidence. This dirty intermixing, intertwining of real things and of, false, gullible mumbo-jumbo, in my view, that's an integral part of the phenomenon and not just human contamination.
Yeah, it's not just a side effect. It is a central feature of the, we'll just use air quotes, phenomena, that it deceives us. It sometimes gives us bits of truth mixed with a lot of deception, and that is the rule, not the exception, right?
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
This guy that you investigated, this guru, sort of embodies that. At the same time that he is obviously a fraud, His credentials are fraud. He was a bigamist who traveled from town to town, fathered all kinds of kids, got married multiple times, made outrageous claims, and yet still surrounding him, seemingly miraculous things happened. And he led you, in essence, he led a lot of people to this Uritorco, right? He focused on it.
Exactly. And once again, if you think of similar characters in the story of contactism, UFO, ET contactism, and guruism, shall we say, it's not the only case. Let's think about someone like Edward Billy Meyer in Switzerland. Very interesting and we would say, coherent claims, interesting claims, and then some pictures and footage which are interesting, and some others which are clearly a fraud, and also a very shady guy. And you have the same thing, for example, with the Italian Eugenio Siragusa. You have compelling witnesses and compelling stories, and you have a certain coherence to the story, to the main story, the main narrative. But then the guy was, in jail for sexual abuse. So it's a kind of, in my view, it's really not an exception, once again. It's almost a constant. It's almost impossible to be a guru-like figure in these contactism cases and not have, at the very least, two faces to this kind of characters. That's one of the reasons why I'm growing more and more convinced that the phenomenon looks for this kind of, person, for this kind of personal profile. And also the phenomenon may also confuse the experiencers and drive them to falsify things, to exaggerate claims, to forge evidence. It's really a trickster syndrome, in my humble opinion. And that makes the phenomenon so shady and so difficult to accept in academia and by scientists. Because, of course, when you see all this dirt, you don't want to get mixed up with this. I mean, it doesn't look serious or neat or easy. But once again, there's this saying in Italian, I don't know if you have something similar in English, really, in which they say that once you have a baby with dirty diapers, you throw out the diapers, but with the baby in it. You know what I mean?
Right. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, is our saying. Yeah.
Exactly. Good. That would be the American expression. So the thing is, in my view, gullible people, fideistic and very religious people, they get the diaper. Skeptics, debunkers, and most scientists, they do not get either the diaper and the baby. I think it's about time a third party of open-minded but serious researchers take the diapers and put it away and focus on the baby, if you know what I mean.
I do. By studying this guy, Angel Christ, and learning about his flaws as well as the mystical experiences that happen around him, helps you form a framework for how you proceed on these topics. In that, it's a main feature of the phenomena is that it doesn't want to be figured out and seen, captured in pictures. It always wears a mask or several masks, as you say.
Absolutely. That's my thought exactly. I think another problem for this phenomenon to be really embraced as a worthy research subject by academia and mainstream science is this. These wearing masks, this being culture-specific, geography-specific, history-specific, and I will give you some examples of this. Let's for a moment take up religious appearances and visions. as you well know, you get Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ and their angels in places like Fatima, Portugal, or Garabandal, Spain, or Rome, Italy, which are quintessential Christian Catholic countries. You don't get Shiva and Ganesh in either Spain, Portugal, or Italy. On the other side, of course, in Calcutta or New Delhi in India, you don't get the Virgin Mary or our blessed Jesus or the angels or demons, Christian demons. You get Shiva and Ganesh. And a third example, which are the countries in which you have more UFO, nuts and bolts UFO sightings?
I'll tell you what, Sebastiano, we need to take a break. We're going to hold on that question and come back to it in just a moment. Our conversation with Sebastiano De Felipe continues in a moment. On that same day that Meatloaf died, comedian Louis Anderson passed away. He died here in Las Vegas of cancer. I mention him only because had an interesting encounter with him back in 1989. He had an interest in UFOs. He called up the TV station and asked me to come over to the Desert Inn where he was performing and give him a briefing. So I trotted on over there one night, and he was in between shows at the DI and came into his dressing room and gave him the lowdown on UFO stuff I was working on at the time. And he sat around listening intently, asking questions. He was wearing this enormous silk kimono sitting there in his dressing room. It was a cool experience. I don't know if he stayed interested in the topic, but it was great to meet him way back then. And we're sorry both he and Meatloaf left. We're talking with We're talking with Sebastiano De Felipe about strange phenomena in Argentina. And when we come back, we're going to continue that conversation and get into a discussion of Mount Uritorco, paranormal hotspot. We'll be right back. Sebastiano, before the break, we were talking about different forms of the phenomena that take different, put on different faces or masks in different places based on where they are. You had an example that you're going to share with us.
Yeah, just to sum it up a little bit, a further example, even more detailed, when Jesus Christ appears to some believer, or stigmata are formed in the body of a religious person, as you well know, the hand wounds, they tend to appear in the wrong spot, in the center of the palm of the hand, which is not historically or anatomically accurate. And once again, Jesus or Virgin Mary tends to be very white and blondish and with clear-colored eyes and not Semitic at all. So once again, it's always culture-based. And in my opinion, this is the thing that led so many scientists to say, well, if each person sees what that person wants, that's because it's all in his mind or her mind. And I think that's a big mistake.
You have shared some emails with myself and Colin Kelleher about your work and the similarities with Skinwalker Ranch to the kinds of phenomena that you have seen yourself at Mount Uritorco. And I guess your interest, there was a couple of different reasons for your interest in that region, but this guru that we were talking about set up sort of a camp, a base there, and led people out to see seemingly miraculous things in the sky and in the countryside. So tell us a little bit about the reputation of Uritorco, how far back it goes, and the kinds of phenomena that people have seen.
Well, I would tell you, the whole Uritorco story really started in 1983, because it was a story which was initiated by this guy, Akoganis, really. If there was anything weird or strange in that area before that, we don't know for sure. It's a very person-centered, person-oriented case. Having said that, I did not have the privilege to be in person at the Skinwalker Ranch, which I know you have. But after reading the two excellent books that you wrote with Colin Kelleher and the second one with Dr. Lakatsky, I made a chart of 12 phenomena typology, we would say, 12 of phenomena going on at the Skinwalker Ranch. And I have the chart here with the overlapping chart of the Uritorco area. And I think that I see that 11 out of 12 are a match. I mean, you have unusual and strange animals lurking around in both places. You see impossible creatures, or at least completely unknown creatures in both places. You get to see orbs or flying lights of different colors, which seem to denote volition, intelligence, in both places. You have what you may call UFOs of an apparent metallic nature, I mean, nuts and bolts UFOs, usually very silent in both places. You have celestial or underground voices and mechanic sounds, unexplainable like tunnels or windows to another dimension, portals, electromagnetic and in general energy anomalies which can be picked up by our technology, feelings of a mysterious presence which may communicate through telepathy, poltergeist phenomena. Very important, a Native American background in the Skinwalker area and at the Uritorco area. In both cases, you have a very strong Native American root and legends, and also stories of conflict and violence. And you have also, in my humble opinion, a conduit individual or individuals. I mean, you have contact men or women, as you had with the Acoglanis at the Uritorco. I'm of the opinion that the ranch owners, that lovely couple with which Dr. Kelleher worked, they were really the main target of the phenomenon. And then the only difference would be the cattle mutilation. I'm not aware of cattle mutilation at the Uritorco, but I'm aware of a lot of missing people, missing persons in that area, which is even more creepy.
People just disappear.
Yeah, and sometimes they turn up dead. So for a small town like Apilla del Monte, which is the small town at the foot of the Uritorco, the statistics for people disappearing or getting, strange, mortal, deadly accidents or even homicide is extremely high, extremely suspicious.
You used the phrase person-oriented, meaning the phenomena zeroes in on people and it sort of uses them as magnifiers, or it goes down into their heads and picks out bits and pieces, and then it shows people what's already into their brains? What do you mean?
Yeah, that's my opinion. I'm being very bold discussing Skinwalker Ranch with Paul, because you are the experts. But from reading the two books very attentively, to me, it's quite clear that the most outstanding phenomena used to happen when those two people were around, if you think about it. Either without the investigators or with them. But the two of them, the couple, were present most of the time. And when they weren't present, it was very difficult to pick up and also to record phenomena. It was usually a very fleeting phenomena, one-to-one, something that you just see and cannot capture with a camera or with a sound recording equipment. So to me, that is very, very interesting. I tend to believe that those two were not the only, but the main targets of the phenomenon there.
You had some experiences yourself at Uritorco. Can you share those with us? And we'll come back to the Skinwalker comparison.
Oh, well, I can try. I'm not very much into that.
Okay.
I can certainly try. No problem. Yes, I had 2 or 3 personal experiences while researching the field. I went, during 25 years, regularly to the Uritorco to do field work. So in 2 or 3 occasions, I did have very powerful and strange experiences with clouds, I would say, with real clouds up there in the sky, which were moving in a very unusual way, extremely unusual way, I mean. It's not something you can explain with weird winds. And I also saw huge flashes of silver light, and I also saw golden, smaller flashes of light moving, also stopping at the zenith of the flash action and kind of, drawing a picture of something, a kind of sun with rounded spikes. And together with a friend who was with me, fronted a kind of small, a medium-sized orb/cloud at very near distance, with some kind of activity inside, like multicolored gas or liquids intermixing, bluish, gray, I think.
Well, that sounds an awful lot like the bluish liquid in these orbs that we're seeing at Skinwalker Ranch. This, by the way, the thing you call a cloud was like 5 meters off the ground, right? It's not way up in the sky. It's right on the ground where you could look at it.
It was not exactly an orb. It was an elongated, regular shape. That's why I'm also calling it a kind of cloud. I have to tell you, George, when I first read in the, if I recall rightly, the first book about the ranch, description of this orb with bluish lights and activity inside, the book I almost fell off of my hands to the ground, because that's a really close description what I saw and also interacted with in the Uritorco area. And this thing, I can tell you, which was either intelligent or controlled by something intelligent.
Was there communication with you between it and your friend or you?
The weird mafia messages, if you allow me weird expression, because at one time it terrorized its friend into panic by having him hear a kind of chorus in the distance, which I didn't hear, by the way, which is 100% impossible in the middle of nowhere at midnight. Any place to hear a chorus. It's just absolutely impossible. There's no rational explanation for that. So he heard that and went into coma almost. I mean, he was really freaked out. He was crazy with fear. And after a while, it sort of triggered something similar in me, but not so extreme and without any triggering event. I mean, at one point, they called serene and very, normal. And as if this thing button in my head, I had a sudden, quite profound feeling of fear. Then I knew it was time to leave this thing alone. And so we did.
Is there... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Fraud and deceit and hoaxes, but also real.
You know what it's like for, the criticisms of the ranch is the people would see this stuff, even if they had a camera, which they're ranchers, they're not trying to document it for UFO world. they I don't even know if they could have used it because so often when the investigators were around, the equipment, recording gear, cameras, etc., batteries would die. All that stuff was useless against the phenomena. If you tell someone, "Oh yeah, well we tried to get pictures of it, but boy, you should have seen it," they'll say, "Oh sure, sure." They don't believe you because it's hard to accept that this whatever it is intelligent, it's evasive, it does not want to be documented. But that is one of your conclusions, that it appears to us here and there, but doesn't really want us to get a real solid fix on it.
I think you got it right. I mean, it's very well put. And once again, I don't think the phenomenon tends to work on a one-to-one basis or with very small group of people, and to avoid technological detection. But then it does, because once you have the experience yourself, you become convinced and you change as a person. The problem, of course, is that you cannot pass on your experience in tell the story. And I think this is the way it works.
You know what? Is there anything about Uritorco that makes it special, other than people have seen this stuff there at least back to the 1980s? Is it the people who are there that caused the phenomena, or is it something that has always been there that is just now revealing itself since the 80s?
Well, in my opinion, there are several interesting things to mention here. One is certainly this Akoglanis guy was a conduit. He was a contact man for these intelligence, consciousness, beings, or whatever you want to name them. That's for sure. Then it's a place in which a huge slaughter of Native American people happened. And there's also literature about that. I mean, more than one hotspot, several hotspots around the world are somehow tied with battles or very violent historical situations. So I think that could be also a thing. And it could be also a thing at the Skinwalker Ranch, by the way. Oh. You know, there were also problems among the pre-Columbian people out there.
Sebastiano, I know for a lot of people who delve into these waters that it becomes frustrating because answers are hard to come by. We really don't know. We don't even know for sure what questions to ask, but we do know that we don't have really solid answers to any of the big ones. We don't know what this is, where it's from, what its intention is, how long it's been here. You in an interview, a podcast with Stuart Davis, you used a phrase that stuck in my head. You said, "I'm fine with not knowing," rather than jump to a conclusion to put yourself in a box. You're okay with not really knowing the answer. You just maybe it's the search for answers that is the point of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think you put it very well. Yes, I wouldn't say I'm okay with that. I'm certainly not happy with that. But okay. I mean, I'm coming to believe, and this is just an idea, just a gut feeling, that we as a species, Homo sapiens sapiens, we may not be equipped to see and really understand this reality, this layer of existence, this realm of being. And, sometimes I'm a person which is very much worried about animal welfare. And I think about, for example, dogs. If I were a dog, I would certainly be aware of the presence of people around me, but I wouldn't understand nothing about their society, culture, and technology. And by the way, if I'm a lucky dog, I will be a very loved and cared for pet in a good household. But if I don't get lucky, I may be on my own on the streets without water and food, or even in the hands of a person who may, torture me or kill me. I'm starting to wonder if we are not the dogs and cows or even plants without sentient beings, certainly, but without the necessary equipment, the right eyes, the right ears, to just see the people, the beings which are above us. We certainly know the ones which are below us, minerals, plants, and animals. But I'm wondering about the ones that may be, above us, which certainly see and understand us, but not the other way around.
Yeah, we ask, well, why don't they land on the White House lawn? Why don't they show themselves and have a conversation with us? I mean, you could also say, why don't people talk to rocks? I do talk to cats and dogs once in a while. I don't expect them to understand me, but I've been known to have a conversation with them. But it's more of being friendly than trying to.
Let alone hand a cell phone to a dog or a cow or a plant. Yes, a dog or a cow may see the cell phone, but there's no way he will understand what's that about. I think we may be in a similar position, which is intriguing and a bit frightening.
We get glimpses of what to us looks like technology, advanced technology, sometimes far in excess of anything we have, and sometimes only just barely ahead of what we have, as if inspiring us to try to duplicate it. Is the technology sort of a side product of what could be some kind of an illusion or a mind game, or does the phenomena, does this intelligence, or maybe it's plural intelligences, do they need that technology to actually get here?
I don't have the faintest idea, but I do know this. Below us, we have animals, plants, and minerals. And animals are pretty much aware of our species, although in an incomplete way. Plants are less aware, and minerals, perhaps they are not aware at all. And I'm wondering, perhaps above us, we have several layers of beings. And sometimes we get in contact with a layer which is pretty near to us, and sometimes we get into contact with beings which are far removed and far above us, and we just don't get a thing. I mean, there's no way to know, right? But I think at least it's a logical way to try to reason. But of course, we don't know.
You've written that, or maybe it was on Stewart's podcast, where you said, trying to separate UFOs from these other phenomena is just not a good idea. We don't know that they're separate and distinct, and assuming that things like the cattle mutilations or Bigfoot or poltergeist activity are unrelated to what look like technical devices that fly around in the sky is an assumption we probably shouldn't make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you two things. The first reason, in my opinion, we shouldn't do that is because there's something in common with all of them, with no exception. And that thing in common, it's us, our own participation on the phenomena. Just, providing the costumes and the masks for the phenomenon. And just a very short example, there are these two cases in Italy occurring at the same time of voices coming through a radio. In one city, they introduced themselves as ETs. In another nearby city, very similar voices introduced themselves as the voices of dead people. Exactly the same phenomenon, same place almost, same country at least, same time frame. And they give you different explanations. So I think it's quite logical to think that it's all connected some way.
We've reported it, we wrote about it, about OSAP, this program overseen by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which started as a UFO program. The funding was to focus on UFOs, but also to follow the evidence wherever it led. And the evidence led to some pretty strange stuff. Skinwalker Ranch, what we would compare to poltergeist activity. It may not be poltergeist, but that's how it was behaving. Strange animals, cattle mutilations, things of that sort that seemingly have nothing to do with UFOs or UFO technology, but that you had to follow the evidence where it led, and that's where it led. That was the program. It was replaced because people became uncomfortable with that in part because they were uncomfortable with all the strange trails that effort led to. And a couple of years later, there was a new program, ATIP, that only focused on military sightings, UFOs, sensor data, radar, things of that sort, which, I don't think you're ever going to figure this stuff out if that's all you look at. You have to follow the evidence where it leads. I think that's what you're suggesting.
Not only that, I think we have to come to accept that the few interactions we may have with this phenomenon are on the phenomenon's terms and not ours. And the phenomenon tends to laugh at our science, at our technology, at our knowledge, at our money. And who knows, perhaps the way to try to communicate with this, since we are coming to understand that it is something with intelligence, with personality, something that may be alive, it's in a very respectful way, very prudent and cautious way. Like, knock, knock, may I come in? I'm so-and-so. I would like to communicate with you, and I will just sit alone in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of the night, and just make silence, no technology with me, and see what happens.
Yeah, back again to compare it to Skinwalker, the NIDS team that was there on the ranch after Bigelow bought the place in the mid-'90s. They came in gangbusters with technology and cameras and gear and sensors and tried to document things. And for a while, the phenomena played along with that. They had some really spectacular incidents. Whatever it is revealed itself to them in very unusual ways. And then the whole equation changed. After the first couple of years, this thing became less frequently seen. It wasn't as spectacular. It made it even more impossible to document encounters and sightings. And then it went underground. And then it, for a while, at least until NIDS gave up, then it came back. And it's there now, but it could go away again, depending on, whether it thinks it's fun or not. I don't know what it is that triggers changes in its approach. But it does get frustrating for people that are trying to get answers. But again, as you said, it calls the shots. The rules, it makes up the rules. It decides what we're allowed to see, right?
And I think you got it right. I get the impression sometimes that the phenomenon gets bored with us.
Yeah.
It expects more from us. And then it gets bored and goes away.
So you called them semi-invisible shepherds of yet unknown intentions. Do you allow yourself theories about where they're from, what they are? Is it a they or is it an it?
Well, it all comes back to the example I was mentioning with minerals, plants, animals, persons. I tend to think we, in this very same planet, on the surface of planet Earth, there are as many layers of life, of sentient life above us, as they are below us. We certainly know about the ones below us. We don't know a thing about the one above us. So I'm starting to think, to suspect that we are the plants, and these things may be what Homo sapiens is to plants. So we are aware of their existence, but you don't have the tools to really interact in a way that is fulfilling for us.
You had mentioned at the time when you talked earlier about this cloud that wasn't really a cloud, that there were some red lights, these red lights that you saw, and you jumped in a car and jammed up the hill or whatever to try to intercept them, right? And then again, this thing sort of laughed at you with that attempt.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your last words.
The phenomena sort of laughed at your attempt to intercept it. It wasn't impressed by that, right?
I think so, yes. And in the end, it also got bored. That was the feeling we got after, half an hour without the last orb or cloud or mist. We got the impression it got bored and just scared the hell out of us just to leave it be. Yeah. We are not sure, of course, but that was the impression we were under.
And I think I remember reading that you had talked about these red objects that were in the sky and they froze in the sky. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Oh, well, it's very difficult to describe, actually. That particular night, we had a three-part phenomenon. First, huge flashes of silver light, but huge, I mean, giant flashes of silver light on the other side of the mountain. And then on another spot, around some hills, we got these smaller flashes of red and golden light, but they were really very difficult to describe because it were flashes, but they stopped at one point, like drawing in the horizon a picture of something that nowadays we may call a drawing of the coronavirus, perhaps. And then you have to imagine a kind of depiction of the sun, but the sun spikes, they are rounded up with balls at the end. So something quite similar to the vulgar depiction of the coronavirus nowadays. This was really strange. And by the way, impossible to capture with a camera. We tried, but nothing came out of it. Just a tiny light in the horizon. So it was impossible to capture on camera this amazing kind of crown. And then the third and last part, we got this kind of orb cloud with the, I don't know, liquid gas. We will never know what that was.
We've reported about dogmen at the ranch and other places, and you had an interesting observation about dogmen. I don't know if they had reported these any kind of similar creatures exactly like dogmen at Uritorco, but you made an interesting observation about shapeshifter animals, dogs and dogmen, wolves, shapeshifters, things of that sort, and where they pop up in different religions and cultures. Could you share that with us?
In the Uritorco area, we had some experiences with a kind of huge bull on two legs, which is really a crazy thing. So I don't know. I'm not aware of many stories about canines or dogs or wolves or dogmen at the Uritorco area. But I can surely tell you that there's a cultural thing, a very ancient cultural thing, which with dogs and dogmen and canines in general, which has to be, it's related to Anubis, the Egyptian god. It's related to Sirius, the constellation of the dog. It's relating to the Bible when they call the dog in Hebrew Caleb, and then you have the Mormons, which, by the way, you have the Skinwalker Ranch in a Mormon state. They name Kolob, which is almost the same like Caleb. They call Kolob the planet in which God dwells. So there's so many histories, so much culture around dogs and canines and jackals and dogmen, that it's really a thing for a lifetime research. Lots of coincidences about dogs and dog-related creatures all around the world.
The Egyptians, they is it Anubis? Anubis.
Yeah, Anubis, right? That was a real dogman.
When they appear to us in that form, what the heck is that about? Just to mess with our heads? What could be going on there?
Quite probably. Yeah, quite probably. I think they can manifest themselves, or it can manifest itself only through what it will find inside of our mind. So, or a variation of it. Sometimes perhaps to puzzle us, it will mirror what we have in our brain with something different but related to it. I'm really growing more and more convinced that this is the case. we participate, not only as experiencers or witnesses, we really provide the meat and bone of the impersonations. It doesn't matter if it is an orb, an animal, a cryptoid, a nuts and bolts UFO. I do think we provide the aesthetics. We provide the sets and costumes and masks.
We started our conversation talking about this guru who was the subject of some papers that you wrote. He made a very violent end. When we come back after the break, I want you to tell that part of the story, what happened to him, because it's a nasty ending. And then we'll open up the phone lines with some questions, comments, calls from our listeners. We have a segment remaining with Sebastiano Di Felipe talking about, among other things, this unique Argentinian ufological guru of the 80s, Angel Cristo Acoglanis, sorry about that pronunciation, who helped put Mount Uritorco on the map. But Angel met a very bad end. And we're going to hear that story when we come back, then go to the phone, see what's on your mind here in our next segment of Coast to Coast AM. Sebastiano, we started our conversation with talking about this UFO guru of the 80s that you wrote about. Can you share with us how he met his end?
Oh, yes. It was a dramatic and theatrical way out for a dramatic and theatrical and convoluted story. In 1989, he was 64 years old. He was at his office in Buenos Aires, and he got a visit from his very best friend, which, by the way, was a person who used to work with General Perón, ex-president of Argentina. This person told Acoglanis, "Listen, I have here something for you." And then he shot 7 times and left his so-called friend in a pond of blood. He was, of course, immediately dead as he hit the pavement. And then this guy, whose name was Ruben Antonio, went immediately to the nearest police station to confess, and he did so with these words, which I will quote literally verbatim. Do you know what you have to do with sorcerers? You have to kill them. I just killed a sorcerer, and now I feel pretty much relieved.
You know, I could see some of his ex-wives, because he would marry women, father children, and then abandon them, move on to something else. Yeah. It's amazing that an ex-wife didn't gun him down at some point.
Yes, absolutely. That was another, let's say, phase to this person. He had this Don Juan complex, which got him into trouble, serious trouble, and this was also the case with his best friend and his best friend's wife. So that's also an element in the mixture.
He was very close with several strongmen. You mentioned about this guy who was associated with Perón, but he was this guy Acoglanis was close with strongmen of other countries who came to him for medical treatments, right?
Yes. Not being a physician himself, he posed as one. He was the main consulting physician for several presidents and secretaries of state and very well-known finance gurus and famous, actors, TV personalities. So he was a very simple person, but surrounded by quite an entourage. You've
written that, in essence, these places that become hotspots, that it's not entirely accidental, maybe, that the intelligence, the phenomena, whether it's religious sanctuaries or sacred places or places like Uritorco or Skinwalker, that people are drawn there, and that's part of the phenomenon, is that it seems to almost want notoriety because it, in essence, feeds off of people. It enjoys that energy that's created, whether it's fear or other kinds, or pain or faith, violence, things like that. Do you believe that?
I think it's a possibility. And once again, let's revert to the examples I was giving about people and animals. People like you and me who love animals will give a lot of attention and love to our pets, to our dogs, and we will have that back also from them. So very strong feelings. And also perverted people may get pleasure from another kind of very intense feelings like torturing people or torturing animals. So to me, there may be a component of that. I think it's a kind of, it has to it's related to the food chain, to the universal general food chain about the bigger fish and the smaller fish.
Let's take a couple of calls. We go to the wildcard line. Miyad in New York City on the wildcard one. Hi, welcome back to Coast to Coast. How you doing?
Yes, and blessed greetings, the best to the beloved Coast Radio family for 2022 and beyond. But this is such a great program. First of all, I can't help but note, and I have a brief multi-part question, and I'll listen over the air, but I can't help but first ask, he seems to have a Barloffian voice, and whether he's done any acting. I'm also asking this next question to you too, George, in that the cover on Amazon of the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac by Craig Campobasso, whether you've had him on, and if both of you are familiar with his work, because it's fascinating, and it's laid out so well in that he goes into their technology of each species and their consciousness abilities. One thing it shows us, reading it, is that we are very, very far down on the scale in terms of consciousness and spirituality. But my main part of the question is Agathians is his first part where he's talking about human extraterrestrial races. And he mentions that the capital, these are people who are humans, but who originally came from the stars. So I'd like to know if you're both aware of this, but the capital of Agatha in Shambhala, under the Himalayas, and Posid, Posid, is the Atlantean capital located beneath the Mato Grosso Plateau in Brazil. That's my first main question. Also, I think it was in the late Timothy Green's book where I was reading about UFOs somewhere in South America. I can't remember the details, but they were riding bicycles throughout a particular town. And so if he has my questions, I'll listen over the air. Thank you so much, George, for this program.
Okay. Well, Sebastiano, let's start with this. Have you done any acting?
Well, yes, I was a singer too, so it goes with the package.
And a musician and a conductor. Well, you're very talented.
Yeah.
This E.T. Almanac that was mentioned by Campo Basso, I'm not familiar with that. I don't believe he's been on the program.
But with that either, no.
Oh, okay. Agathians, some kind of a Shambhala type city underground, maybe in Brazil.
Yes, Akoglanis was very into Agatha, Shambhala, El Dorado, and all the mythology of underground secret mystic cities. And he thought and he taught that nearby the Uritorco there was a Shambhala of his own, which was named Erx. So it has everything to do with that kind of literature.
Yeah, that's title of the subtitle of one of the papers you wrote is Underground City of Erx, and it's like this guy Angel, call him. He would read a book, and then it becomes part of his philosophy. He reads a new book, and then that becomes part of his philosophy. He just sort of borrowed bits and pieces of information along the way, right?
Yeah, he was a kind of chameleon.
Okay, we're going to go to Jim in British Columbia on the wildcard line. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Coast. You're on with Sebastiano.
Hi, George. Thank you very much for taking my call. I just tuned in part of the way through the thing here. I just had a question for your guest. I wondered if he was familiar with that lady in Argentina. I think it was La Palma, Argentina, or whatever. She was abducted by that ball of light, and she was carried across the border into Buenos Aires. And she had some missing time, and she had her cell phone with her, and they were looking at it, and they had, I think her name was Irma Hayes or something, and they were investigating it, and then it was taken over by the prosecutor and local judiciary to almost look at it from a legal point of view. And I wondered, like they said, we don't know whether this will be, the information will come back with the public where it's open for them to hear about, or if it will just be a judicial type of thing, because I've seen those balls of light fly over here in BC where I am. And I read Val Johnson in the Medium Daily Digest, the account there about Val Johnson, the policeman, and had the ball of light that hit his police car, and the car's in Minnesota now. And there was a man's article in there about his theory on what this ball of light was from a remote viewer from, I forget his name, in the Bronx Spawner or something. He was a remote viewer. And he described his take on this ball of light and what it could be. And I thought, wow, that sounds like, like it could very possibly be from what he says. We don't know, I guess, but I've seen those come over the hill like a star, come right over top of us with witnesses, and then disappear in total silence. And I thought, well, this almost sounds like what came over this lady in, I forget what it's called, a Papa or something in Brazil, or in Argentina. Carried her across the border and then left her on the road in Buenos Aires, and everybody's checking this out. And I wondered if your guest was familiar with that.
Well, let's ask him. Thanks, Jim, for the call. Sebastiano, does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it does. I'm not sure which case was in particular, but we certainly have lots and lots and lots of cases of abductees with missing time and a huge ball of lights and, no time transportation from one place to another one. There's such a huge case book down here in Latin America. You couldn't imagine. It's really huge. It's impossible to embrace.
We in the United States tend to think that everything revolves around us, so we focus on our own cases and ignore much of the rest of the world, which is unfortunate because there's a great body of literature, not only South America, but Europe and Asia as well. Wildcard line, Beatrice in Whittier. Hi, Beatrice. You're on with Sebastiano.
Yes, hello, George. I have a couple of comments to make for your guest to respond to. Hello, Sebastiano. First of all, you said that what they look like, what we see, is different in different regions and different belief systems. But it seems to me that most of the time the message is the same as far as we should love each other and treat each other with equality and mutual respect and cooperation. And so I'm thinking perhaps they think that what we see or expect to see is not as important as the message that they want to give us. And secondly, even though we can't understand them, what they are, any more than dogs can understand us, unlike dogs, we have the capacity to ponder and contemplate what they are, and perhaps they think that challenge could elevate our thinking and perhaps even eventually take us to a place where we can have an experience beyond our own mundane physical plane. What do you think?
Sebastiano, what do you think about that?
Well, I tend to disagree on both issues. The message is not always the same, and sometimes there's no message, or the message is a mafia-like message, which is very unpleasant, like in the Skinwalker Ranch case, for example. And about the other thing, yeah, of course, Homo sapiens has a powerful brain. We can theorize, we can make a hypothesis, we can dream. But once again, perhaps on the upper layers of intelligence, there's a kind of intelligence, a kind of brain, a kind of consciousness we cannot even begin to imagine what's about. And perhaps we are really like dogs for them. There's really no way to know. But the difference in intellectual capacity could be as big as the one we have with the upper echelon of mammals. Why not?
Beatrice, thanks for the call. Sebastiano, how do people find your work? Is there a central location? I know you've written 3 books, but they're in Italian and Spanish, not in English. So are there articles in a central archive that our listeners could find?
Well, there are a couple of papers, of articles, which I'm sure will go online shortly. The books, as you well said, are right now in Italian and Spanish, but I do hope to get at least one of them translated into English. The reception of my work is interesting, I think. It has at least 2 sides. The people I tend to debunk, self-appointed fake gurus profiting from gullible people. They are very angry at me, extremely angry. And then you have, of course, the professional scientist, debunker, skeptic, who's also not happy. But you cannot make everyone happy. That's life.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you've said it, and I've read it in some of your work that the fakes, the people who are con men, are drawn to this topic. There's no getting around it. They've always been that way. I guess it comes with the territory. It gums up the works. It makes it harder to get around that. It makes it easier for people to want to debunk it, right?
Yeah, in my opinion, it's very important to really try to get rid of them. It's very important.
Sebastiano De Felipe, I really appreciate you being here, staying up so late. I'll encourage people to check out your work and find some of the papers online. I'll put some up as well, and I was so glad to meet you and can't wait to talk to you again.
It was my pleasure. I also hope to talk to you again very soon.
Thanks very much. Sebastiano De Felipe is a world-class conductor and musician. If you look him up on Google, you'll see a lot of that stuff, but keep looking and you'll find some of the papers that he's written about this Argentinian guru and some of the fakes that he's exposed. So appreciate him being here.